Are you constantly trying to get the approval of other people? Is everything you do geared around getting people to accept you, to like you, to tell you that you're good enough? Well, I lived that for many, many years. So if that's you, stick with me, because this week I want to help you to get rid of that for good. Hi, this is Grant Herbert, VUCA Leadership and Sustainable Performance Coach, and today I want to continue our conversation around this thing called our identity by helping you to conquer the 3 universal fears. For many years, I had this need to please everybody, and it was exhausting. Last week, we talked a little bit about that, and we talked about the fact that when I was young, I found out something that really screwed up my thinking. It made me feel like I was not worthy and that I wasn't good enough. And it really made my behavior counterintuitive to what it was that I wanted to do, and that was to get on with people. My relationships were poor, and it was this constant battle of trying to get approval that was the big problem. So this week, as I said I would, what I want to do is start going deeper into why this happens. You know, some people call it imposter syndrome, others call it the performance trap, and others call it an approval addiction, but whatever it is, it's all rooted in the same 3 universal fears. Now, I'm not talking about fear of heights or spiders or, anything like that. I'm talking about internal fears. What you fear about you, what you fear is going to happen or not happen based on your own behavior. So let's unpack these 3 universal fears and then look at how we can shift away from them to be more confident in who it is that you are, and be okay with who you are, and get to that position of self-approval. So the point I want to make here before we introduce these 3 fears is they are universal. This is not something that just goes on for you. You're not weird or unusual. Every human being on the planet goes through these same fears. The behavior that manifests from that fear might be different, but the root fears are exactly the same. So what are they? The first fear is the fear of not being enough. Some people add the word good enough there. And what this really means is that you are fearing that everything you do is not good enough, that people won't think that it's up to par. And what that creates is an environment of working, striving to get things right, perfectionism, procrastination. There's a lot of things that are geared around this fear. So if you think others might feel it's not good enough, or deeper, that you're not good enough, then that is going to erode your confidence. It's going to hold you back from hitting send on that email and checking it then 25 times before you actually do. It's really going to shift your thinking about what it is that you need to do so that you are good enough. Now, this was a big one for me. Having been left on a doorstep as a baby, I made it believe that it definitely meant I wasn't good enough. If there's something you don't think's good enough, you give it away, you discard it. And that's how I felt, because it lined up with how I was feeling at that time. But what you need to do is shift that thinking to the fact that you are good enough. Yes, as I said last week, you're on a journey just like me. I call it my journey of imperfection. I'm never going to get perfect. That's never going to be the goal, but I'm okay with who I'm becoming. I'm okay with my progress. I'm okay with the fact that I'm still learning, even at 61 years of age. Every day is a part of my journey of growth and contribution. I know that I'm not going to get things right all the time. But I also know that mistakes are my greatest teacher. And I've shifted my thinking around that. The main thinking I had to shift, and that you need to shift as well, is your thinking around whether or not other people decide if you're good enough or not. You see, that is not something that you outsource. We talked about that last week. So that's the first fear, the fear of not being enough. Let me tell you, you are enough, just the way you are. The second is the fear of not belonging. We all want to belong. From the moment we're born, we want to belong. And it's a constant journey as we grow up as a young child, and we want to belong in our family, with our siblings, with our parents. We go to school, we want to belong in the circles of the cool kids and all these things that happen in our life. And then we go through into our higher schooling and then into the workplace. And it's this constant fear that you don't belong. And this is the root of imposter syndrome, in my opinion. Why am I here? This isn't where I belong. I'm not good enough. And that's a classic example of the fears working together. But you do belong. And it's realizing that you do belong, and that it's up to you to decide whether you do belong. That's the key to being able to break free of imposter syndrome, to be able to move forward in confidence that you've got everything within you and around you to get where you need to go. And then the third fear is the fear of not being loved. Every single person on the planet, yes, that includes you, needs to be loved. You might want to call it liked, whatever it is for you. But there's that desire to have people love you. And when you fear that you're not going to have that connection, you're not going to have that love, you behave in a way that you think will actually get people to love you. Unfortunately, in my own life, I can tell you from experience that what actually happens when you try to get that love with the mindset that you have, that you're not good enough, that you don't belong, and everything else that's going on in that internal dialogue, you actually push people away. You actually become a type of person that people find more challenging to love because you're not being you. So there they are, those three universal fears: the fear of not being enough, the fear of not belonging, and the fear of not being loved. And when one or two or all three of those fears are triggered, that shifts what goes on in your thinking. If you fear that you're not belonging, then you might withdraw. You might leave where you're working. You might pull back. Or you might go the other way and try and push your way in. And that's another example of the behavior being counterintuitive for whatever it is that you wanted to achieve. If you fear that you're not good enough, you become a people pleaser. You'll do more than you could to get the results. You'll try, like I did, to be the best at everything. Because at least if I try to be the best, I might be good enough. Unfortunately, that's exhausting. And it takes away from your authentic self. It strips away the true essence of who you are. And I said it last week, as Eleanor Roosevelt said, it just rings in my ears all the time: what other people think of you is none of your business. So you are enough, you do belong, and you are loved. So these three universal fears are the underpinning roadblocks to you having a healthy identity. So what I want you to do is I want you to look for evidence of why you do belong, why you are good enough, and why you are loved. And when you do that, just like me, you'll find it. And when that internal voice starts making you feel like you don't, remind it that you do. And as we continue in the weeks to come, we're going to add more layers around the work that we need to do to build that identity up. And you're going to be able to shift that internal dialogue. And you're going to be able to retrain that small voice that you've created to keep you safe and to eliminate the opportunity for you to go through those 3 universal fears. Well, that's it from me for another week. Join me again next week as we continue to rebuild your identity by helping you to retrain that inner dialogue so that it empowers you rather than holds you back. I'll see you then.